Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our Thursday Treasure program, where we go through some of the lesser-seen objects in the museum's collection. My name is Claire Menard, and I'm the programs manager here at the Westport Museum for History and Culture. At the Westport Museum, we are pleased to offer free programming. We do have a donation link if you are so inclined. We understand this is a difficult time for many, and any support you can give the museum is greatly appreciated. If at any point during our program you have any questions, please enter them in the comments box and our moderator will respond to any appropriate questions and comments. So today's theme, as you might have guessed, is hair. In modern times, there are so many things we can do with our hair. You can keep it long, cut it short, you can even dye it bright and crazy colors. But for much of history, hair had very specific norms, and these norms were even policed in certain times and places. Hair is a surprisingly philosophical and complex topic. Many myths and stories even contain hair. Think, Rapunzel and Medusa. Hair is malleable in nature and can be just as expressive and change just as frequently as our clothing does. So the objects we have today, we have some objects focusing, of course, on hair care, and we also have some leaning more towards hair decoration. Today, we'll be focusing primarily on European hair care and hairstyles, particularly from England, spanning roughly the 13th to 19th centuries. This is because most of our hair-related artifacts we either know or presume to be from American families of European descent. I want to apologize in advance. I have my notes with me. I have a lot to say today, and I want to say it well. So I promise I won't be like this the whole time, but I will be looking down every now and again. So on to hair care. Before we start, I want to give a big disclaimer about how attitudes surrounding cleanliness change over time. Just because people did something different in the past does not mean it was wrong. And if you want to hear more about the concept of hygiene, you can visit our Thursday Treasure on Hygiene, which is available on our YouTube page. Europeans and American colonists did not wash their hair nearly as frequently as we do today, and their reasoning behind washing their hair was slightly different. They weren't necessarily focused on cleansing the scalp the way we do today. Hair care was more based on aiming at aesthetics and beauty and keeping hair looking nice, fresh, and healthy. And keep in mind that up until the 1920s, women were largely expected to maintain incredibly long hair. Washing long hair is no easy task, and I know that very well myself. Soap used was also not ideal for hair. Soaps that are made with lye are alkaline, which means that they have a pH of 7 or higher. Hair, on the other hand, is actually acidic, with a pH usually ranging from 4.5 to 5.5. So washing hair with lye soap too frequently runs the risk of making it dry and brittle. As such, other methods were used to keep hair clean and healthy. Brushing hair daily did more than just detangle it. It helped evenly distribute the hair's natural oils produced at the scalp, bringing them down to the roots of the hair. Brushing also helped remove any debris, such as dirt. And as you can see, we have several brushes with us today I'd like to show you, starting with this little itty-bitty brush right in front of me. This is actually a baby's brush, and as you can see, it is very ornate in design. It has faces carved into both the front and the back. And we are very lucky to have this brush right up here. This brush is another silver brush, and it has some designs along the edge, and I will show you the back because it actually has initials carved into it that say, I believe, LEB, if I'm remembering correctly. Now, this one is from a similar time period, dated to circa 1890, I'd say. And down in front of me, we have both a brush and a comb, which we are not positive, but we do believe are from the same set. You can see they have very similar designs and are made of the same material. And they also appear to be from the same time period. Once again, we are going with late 19th century circa. So we don't have much information on these pieces, but they are very beautiful nonetheless. Now back to more hair care methods. During the Middle Ages, hair was often braided and wrapped around the head. This is known as a protective style, which prevents tangling and breakage in the hair. The hair was then covered by a linen cap or veil most of the time, which further protected the hair, and the linen also served the purpose of absorbing any excess grease the scalp may have created. During the 16th and 17th centuries in particular, men would even wear wigs instead of maintaining their own hair. Wigs, which had been around for thousands of years, were not only considered fashionable during this time, but held a real functional purpose. Lice was a major problem, and it still is. Highly contagious and notoriously difficult to get rid of, wigs helped prevent their spread. Wigs could also hide the symptoms of another prevalent issue, syphilis. Wigs could mask hair loss as well as rashes caused by the disease. Some wigs were worn only for formal occasions, while some men opted to actually shave their heads and wear wigs daily. When styling these wigs, a pomade made of animal fat was often used. It really wasn't until the early 20th century that we began to see hair care as we know it today. It was in around the 1930s when the disparity between body soap and shampoo widened, when shampoos began to use synthetic surfactants instead of soap. So less risk of that dry, brittle hair, drying it out with the different pH levels. So that helped bring it back into balance and created a more specialized product just for our scalp. Now, let's talk about beauty standards, focusing particularly on early modern England, kind of around that time period. Much of what we know today about England's beauty standards regarding hair is not explicitly stated, but is implied through mediums such as plays and songs describing beautiful women, as well as those who have been shunned. Now, Milton's Paradise Lost, written in 1667, describes Eve's hair as such, quote, "She, as a veil down to the slender waist, her unadorned golden tresses wore disheveled, but in wanton ringlets waved, as the vines curls her tendrils." In early modern England, a hair's texture and abundance, even the way it flowed, was just as important as its color, which there was usually a preference for blonde hair, which still continues to this day. Many women actively dye their hair a blonde color. Specifically, finely textured and slightly curled was the idea. Women worked very hard to get curly hair, which was considered the most beautiful and healthy. These attributes were, of course, associated with beauty, but they were also associated with virtue, purity, and even an elite status. Your hair was, in a way, literally tied to your worth as a human being. Now let's talk about hair aesthetics versus the health of hair. Hair is one of the avenues through which the line between health and beauty is continually blurred. For much of history, one's overall health and quality of hair were one and the same. Thomas Vickery, a 16th century physician and anatomist, claimed hair's purpose was fourfold: to defend the brain from extreme temperatures, to make the head more, quote, seemlier or beautifulier, 3, to reveal the brain's complexion, and 4, to allow the brain's fumosities or fumes to escape. So hair, which is on the outside, was an indicator of what was going on the inside of our bodies. Oils, herbs, and other natural ingredients were employed to help keep hair healthy, just like how we'd use the same ingredients to keep our bodies healthy. The Queen's Closet Opened, a book published in 1655, recommended a simple treatment of putting honey on bald spots to promote healthy, thick hair and just overall growth, length, and to curl the hair. Like I said, curls were very in vogue at the time. Some medical texts claimed curls, the aesthetic ideal, were a symbol of good hair and that they could be achieved by balancing the body's humors with various treatments. Just as good hair was praised as the epitome of good health, the opposite can also be said. Poor hair was seen as a sign of poor health and, in some cases, poor morals. Some scholars have tied this to the phenomenon of hair loss due to venereal diseases such as syphilis, so it may have been implied that someone suffering a hair loss may have suffered a similar disease. It is important to note that for much of history, social castes were linked with biology. People argued that those of the higher class were innately more intelligent and in better health, kind of like the divine right of kings. Some people were just born better than others in their eyes. For much of European history, medicine and religion were combined. The natural world, religion, and our social environment were one and the same, and each was really used to justify the other. The Bible even speaks to hair. The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 says, quote, "Does not nature itself teach you that if a man wears long hair, it is a disgrace for him? But if a woman has long hair, it is her glory, for her hair is given to her for a covering." While women are less likely to bald due to higher levels of estrogen and fewer androgens, there is no biological reason a woman must have long hair and a man must keep his short, yet that was often done. And a fun, well, not so fun fact, but a lot of Renaissance doctors argued women's long hair was actually a sign of their less complex brains, because apparently our brains were less moist, which meant that they were a better environment for hair growth. I'm not going to pretend to understand that one, but that's what they thought. So anyway, now I want to move on to hair as a means kind of identity and status. Hair can be used to depict one's identity, such as your age, economic status, marital status, or even your religion. What we do with our hair is almost entirely symbolic. Theoretically, all of us could just shave our heads and be done with it, and yet many of us choose not to, whether it be for cultural reasons, aesthetic reasons, personal choices. In fact, a lack of hair can be used as a social statement, as can covering hair. Think, for example, of a hijab. One of the oldest uses for hair was to distinguish ethnic groups outside of one's community, and on the inside to differentiate socioeconomic status. One way different classes were separated was through hair length, especially that of men. Sometimes your hair length was enforced by law. In mid-13th century Bavaria, sumptuary laws said, quote, "Peasants and their sons shall cut their hair to the ears." And this really fun little thing I stumbled across in my research was same place, same time, so mid-13th century Bavaria. There was a poem called Meyer Helmbrecht, which depicted a peasant who is kind of acting above his station, who wears his hair, flowing long and over his shoulders. And after joining a group of thieving knights, he is killed by peasants and they rip out his long hair. When the English encroached into Ireland during the 12th and 13th centuries, they were actually made to keep traditional English hairstyles so they could be easily differentiated from the Irish populace. Many Englishmen had started adopting the hairstyles of local cultures, and this made them more hard to distinguish and therefore more at risk. Another fun story, in 1094 on Ash Wednesday, Archbishop Anselm of Canterbury actually refused to give ashes or his blessing to young men who, quote, grew their hair like girls, so implied like long hair. However, social codes for hair could sometimes be broken. One particular instance was during periods of mourning and grief. There are many accounts across time and many cultures around the world where women are known to let their hair down and pull their hair or even pull it out during times of grief. Ultimately, what I'm getting at here is that hair is contextual. Someone seeing my hair today might have a very different interpretation as someone seeing it 100, 300, or even 500 years ago. It wasn't until the 20th century, whoops, wrong page. I already read you that one. Moving on. Another way hair could be a status symbol was through ornamentation, like some of the delightful pieces we have here today, which we'll take a look at. We're going to start right here with this dark comb. So these are decorative hair combs that would have been tucked into the hair, for example, in a bun in the back of the head, or maybe to sit to the side a bit more askew so it could be more visible from the front. So this comb has a very Art Deco style, and while we don't know much about it, we are guessing based on the look that it is from the 1920s, around that era most likely. Like I said, not much information is known. That's really all we have to go off of is how it looks, unfortunately. But it is a very nice piece nonetheless. And moving down in front to this little metal comb, this comb is circa late 19th century. You'll see a lot of that in these artifacts. And this one was donated alongside the comb right next to it, which this comb is potentially of tortoise shell. So if this comb is indeed tortoise shell, we're going to say it's circa 1880s, late 19th century. But the question remains, is this comb really tortoise shell? After the turn of the century, so going into the 1900s, we see the rise of Bakelite combs. Bakelite was an early plastic and is more translucent than actual tortoise shell. So the donation papers on this comb, as well as the other tortoiseshell ones I show, indicate that they are tortoiseshell, but we cannot say this for certain unless further research is done. So up next, we have this big, very wide comb in the back here, which you can actually see, I believe, is missing part of it. So this comb, again, not much information is known, and we can't even say for certain whether or not it is tortoiseshell, but it does look to be so, which again, we are inclined to believe it is a late 19th century piece just based on that. But like I said, if it is Bakelite, then it is likely early mid-1900s. So this one is real big, so this could have been really tucked behind the head or even come up from underneath. It's a very striking piece. And up next, we have this much, much darker comb in color. It's more arched down in the front. Once again, we are going to say this is most likely late 19th century, maybe tortoiseshell, maybe not, the same deal as the previous two. So once again, not much is known about these combs. Really, all we can say for certain is what we are given in the donation papers. And if a donor does not know much about the history, unfortunately, sometimes it's just lost to us. So while we can show you these artifacts, it is saddening we cannot tell you more about their origins, but we aim to tell you as much as we can. So these are all the artifacts we have for today. I hope you learned at least a few interesting facts about hair and hair care today. Join us next month for our next Thursday treasure. We hope to see you there, and I hope you have a great day.